For only $243,000, my own son pushed me out of the empire I had built with my bare hands. And that night, I realized blood doesn't always mean loyalty. I still remember the moment, as if it just happened yesterday. The papers were on the table, crisp white sheets with black ink that carried the weight of my entire life. My son sat across from me, his face calm, his voice steady, almost rehearsed. He said, "Dad, just sign it. It's nothing big, just a small adjustment in the accounts. You've done enough. Let me handle things now." I wanted to believe him. After all, this was the boy I had raised, the child I had once carried on my shoulders when he couldn't walk, the young man for whom I had sacrificed sleep, meals, and years of my life. Could he really deceive me? Could my own blood stab me in the back? My hands trembled as I picked up the pen. It was just a few signatures, I told myself. Nothing serious. But the moment my pen touched the paper, I felt a strange weight on my chest, as if some invisible force was trying to warn me. Still, I ignored it. A father's love can blind his eyes. By the time I finished signing, my fate had already been sealed. That night, everything changed. When I walked into the office the next morning, the guards at the gate refused to let me in. My nameplate was gone from the door. My son was sitting in my chair, smiling at the board of directors, introducing himself as the new owner. I froze. My legs weakened. For a moment, I thought it was some kind of cruel joke. I shouted, "This is my company. I built this from nothing. You can't just push me out." But the documents in his hand were legal. My own signature had handed him everything, every building, every account, every brick of the empire I had sweated for. "Dad," he said coldly, "don't embarrass yourself. You worked hard, yes, but now it's my time. Take the money, live peacefully, leave the business to me." My heart shattered. This was not a stranger. This was my son, the boy who once ran to me when he fell on the ground, the boy who cried when I left for business trips. And now he was looking at me as if I was nothing, as if I was just a burden in his shining future. I walked out of that office with nothing. No respect, no title, no empire, just the bitter taste of betrayal burning in my throat. But what my son didn't know was that I had not built this empire with only papers and ink. I had built it with my sweat, my blood, and my secrets. And those secrets were never written in the contracts he stole. The nights grew colder. My friends disappeared. Relatives avoided me. A man who loses his wealth quickly learns how empty relationships can be. But I didn't sit idle. I began collecting every small piece of evidence. Emails, transactions, witnesses, everything my son thought he had erased. I watched him from the shadows as he celebrated his new status, drinking with people who once bowed in front of me. I saw him throw around money like water, never realizing that the ground beneath his feet was already cracking. I didn't want revenge at first. I only wanted answers. I wanted to look him in the eyes and ask, why? Why did you betray me when I gave you everything? But the more I saw his arrogance, the more I saw his cruelty, the fire inside me grew. This was not just about money anymore. This was about dignity, about a father who had been crushed by the very son he raised. So I waited, patiently, silently, because the day would come when the same pen that destroyed me would destroy him. I didn't sleep that night. The papers, the betrayal, the cold look in my son's eyes, everything kept replaying in my head like a nightmare that refused to end. But inside that darkness, a thought sparked. He thought he had taken everything from me. He thought I was finished. But what he didn't realize was that I had built this empire twice before, once from nothing, and now I could do it again. The next morning, I went back to the old streets where I had once sold newspapers as a boy. The air smelled the same, dusty and raw, but it reminded me of who I really was, a fighter, not a beggar. I started from scratch. No luxury cars, no big office, no assistants, just me, a notebook, and the hunger for redemption. Every deal I had once made, every contact, every favor, I began to pull the strings quietly. My son had power on paper, but I had the respect of people who mattered. I remembered the long nights when I worked 3 jobs just to pay his school fees, the days I skipped meals so he could eat better. Those sacrifices burned inside me, but instead of breaking me, they made me sharper. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, brick by brick, I began building again. I knew the system, I knew the shortcuts, and I knew exactly where my son's weaknesses weaknesses were. Because here's the truth. He might have stolen my company, but he never learned how to survive failure. I had lived through storms. He had only walked on roads I had paved for him. I still recall one evening. I was sitting in a small rented room, the walls cracked, the fan squeaking overhead. My dinner was just bread and water, but in that silence I whispered to myself, one day I will rise again, and when I do, he will remember this face, not as a broken father, but as the storm he never saw coming. My son celebrated parties in shining halls, but I celebrated patience in my empty room, and patience is a weapon far stronger than wealth. The more I watched him from afar, the clearer it became. Greed was consuming him. He was drowning in luxury, wasting money, ignoring responsibilities, and little by little the cracks began to show. That was when I knew it was almost time. For months I had stayed in the shadows, watching every move my son made. His arrogance was his blindfold. He thought success was permanent, that wealth could silence every doubt, every whisper. But he forgot one thing. Wealth is loud, but truth is louder. I began to move silently. I met old allies, men who once stood beside me when I built my empire. They had watched my son rise, and they had seen the cracks too. Some of them had been humiliated by his arrogance. Others had lost trust in his careless leadership. And when I spoke to them, I saw it in their eyes. They still respected me. They still believed in me. One night, sitting across a dimly lit table in a forgotten cafe, one of my old partners leaned closer and whispered, "We were waiting for you to come back. The empire was yours. Without you, it feels like a body without a soul." That was all I needed. The fire inside me turned into steel. Piece by piece, I began gathering documents, illegal transfers, shady deals, broken contracts. My son had no patience, no discipline. He wanted quick money, easy wins, and that greed had left behind a trail I could follow, a trail I could use. At the same time, I quietly built a new company under a different name, small at first, but strong in its foundation. The workers I hired were loyal, people who remembered the days I treated them not as numbers, but as family. They worked harder than ever because they weren't just building a company, they were building my redemption. And then, the day came. It was a board meeting. My son walked in with his usual swagger, wearing an expensive suit, a glass of wine in his hand, even at 10 in the morning. He laughed, shook hands, and spoke about expansion into markets he didn't even understand. The directors smiled, but behind their eyes there was doubt. That was when the doors opened, and I walked in. For a moment, silence filled the room. My son's face turned pale, then red. His voice shook as he shouted, "What are you doing here? You don't belong here anymore." I placed a thick folder on the table. The sound of it echoed like a gunshot in that silent room. "Maybe I don't belong here," I said calmly. "But the truth does." One by one, I opened the documents. Bank statements, contracts, emails, proof of his corruption, his lies, his fraud. The directors leaned forward, their eyes widening with every page. Whispers spread across the table. My son's confidence shattered. He tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. He tried to blame others, but his excuses drowned under the weight of evidence. "Enough," one director said firmly. "We trusted you with this empire, and you destroyed it." I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. My revenge was not about joy. It was about justice. That night, the same guards who once stopped me at the gate now escorted my son out of the building. His head hung low, his steps heavy. For the first time, he looked small, not because he lost wealth, but because he lost dignity. I stood at the same gate, watching him leave, and in that moment, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Victory, yes, but also pain, because no matter what he had done, he was still my son. I whispered under my breath, "I gave you everything, and still you chose betrayal, this downfall. You created it with your own hands." As the night fell, I returned to my new office. It wasn't as big, not as luxurious, but it was mine, built with honesty, loyalty, and resilience, the same way I had started years ago. And for the first time in months, I slept peacefully because revenge had been served. But more than that, dignity had been restored. The night after the boardroom battle, I sat alone in my office. The city lights outside looked the same as they did years ago, but something inside me had changed. I had won. The empire I built was mine again. Justice had been done, and my betrayer, my own son, was exposed. But strangely, victory didn't taste sweet. It tasted heavy, like a burden that never truly leaves. I thought back to the early days when he was just a boy, running around in school uniform, holding my hand, asking me to buy him ice cream on the way home. I remembered the nights when I came back late from work, exhausted, but still bent down to kiss his forehead while he slept. Those memories stabbed deeper than any betrayal. You see, revenge can give you justice, but it cannot erase love, and no matter what he had done, he was still my blood. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my company with honesty. My workers smiled again, my partners trusted me again, and slowly the wounds began to heal. But in the silence of the night, one question always echoed. Was it worth losing a son to save an empire? One day I heard news that broke me. My son had been seen wandering the streets, drinking heavily, his wealth gone, his friends vanished. The same people who once praised him now avoided his name. He was alone, broken, and angry. I could have ignored it. I could have said, "This is justice, let him suffer." But a father's heart is not made of stone. I went to see him. He was sitting on the steps of an old building, his clothes dirty, his face unshaven, his eyes red from sleepless nights. For a moment he didn't even recognize me. When he finally did, his lips trembled. "Father, I destroyed everything," he whispered. Tears filled my eyes. I sat beside him, placed my hand on his shoulder and said, "You didn't destroy me, son. You destroyed yourself. But even now, you are my son, and if you truly wish to change, I will help you stand again." He broke down in my arms that night, sobbing like the child I once carried. And in that moment, I realized something greater than revenge. Sometimes, forgiveness is the final victory, because revenge can end a war, but forgiveness can end the pain. As I close this story, I want you, the listener, to take something with you. Life will test you. People you love may betray you, but never let bitterness consume you. Build yourself again, fight for your dignity, but never forget, the heart heals stronger with forgiveness. And if this story touched your heart even a little, then don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs this message. Because somewhere out there, another father, another son, another family might find healing through these words.